Yeah, this is number 24.
Sure. All right.
So, yeah, episode 24 is with Laura Anderson, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I guess just start by kind of describing who you are or what you do a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Laura Anderson, and I'm a naturopathic doctor here in Peterborough. I guess it was just one of those things where I never actually even knew what a naturopath was when I was, going through high school or anything like that. It was something that I was always interested in, I was taking sciences, I was interested in sciences, and I was really interested in how, you can take certain substances and how it can affect the body. And so I was actually kind of going down the route of more like pharmacy and to be a pharmacist because I had 2 jobs working at different pharmacies in high school. So I thought, well, if I'm going to, end up being a pharmacist, I might as well start off my career at U of T if I'm going to be going eventually to the U of T School of Pharmacy. And so, so I went to U of T right after high school and just in general arts and sciences. And it was just a really awful, stressful year with case of bed bugs, and I was off campus, and it was just very, very stressful. But it was one of those things where because I was off campus, I had to walk through half an hour even to get to my classes, and I happened to walk through a job fair, and there was somebody from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine there, and I remember stopping and chatting with her, kind of I didn't even know you could learn all this and actually have it as a profession sort of thing. And so, from that moment, it really just changed my whole trajectory of, I finished off the year at U of T and then I ended up coming back to Trent, finishing off my undergrad and then going back to Toronto to finish off the naturopathic college. So it was just kind of interesting that I never really sought after this career, and yet it was just really kind of just that slip moment in time where I just opened up my world to it. So
that's amazing. And Telsey actually has a very similar story.
Oh, wow.
So I'm smiling. I was just that's funny.
So, I think we've touched on it before on the podcast, but if you want to recount it, just because it's that was one of the reasons that I really wanted you on the show, is because it's such a interesting connection.
Yeah, it's very parallel. So the short of my story is that I also grew up loving sciences, loving the body. And I grew up, my mom was supernatural. So I grew up around, not supernatural, but very natural. My mom is God. I grew up just kind of with a lot of, diet was important to us and just healthy lifestyle. But because I was good at math and science, kind of my natural inclination was I'll go to university for health sciences because I like the body and I like science and I was very good at it. And then I got there and everyone was so what med school are you going to? And I was I didn't think that through. I didn't know I was going to med school after this degree. So I was thinking it through and I just didn't align with a lot of the Western medicine ideologies because I didn't grow up with it. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of shocked me because I was really naive to Western medicine. And then I ended up taking a break from school for a bit just to kind of think about what I wanted, and then eventually ended up going to the Canadian College of Homeopathic Medicine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I stopped my degree halfway through. I was in health sciences, then I switched to psychology because I was this feels more aligned with what I'm kind of enjoying. And then I was wait, I don't know what I'm going to do with a psych degree. So then I ended up going to CCHM in Toronto there and finished my, I've got a full diploma in homeopathy and health sciences. So that's pretty fun. And then I was I don't know what to do with this either. It was just kind of just finding my path.
Yeah.
And ended up, so that's how I got into personal training. I was I just need a minute to think about what I'm doing. So I spent some time personal training for about, 3 years or something, and then decided I've got half a psych degree. Maybe I should go back to Trent and finish my psych degree. So that's what I did. So I just finished that a couple weeks ago, which is exciting.
Yay, that's awesome.
But it's just kind of funny. We're both science, let's do it. And then we're whoa, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really, I've definitely carried that through with even my personal training, a more holistic route. And we talk about hormones and balancing them and diet in a more holistic way rather than just chicken and rice.
Yeah,
that kind of
absolutely.
stuff. So I'm really intrigued to like hear your take on things.
Yeah. That's really cool.
And, you know, the other similarity or the other tie-in that was, I also experienced the undergrad science route at U of T, and that pressure and that intensity there, which is really like shocking. I mean, first year organic chemistry, the first midterm, there were kids literally crying in the midterm.
Absolutely.
And it's a major eye-opening. And then, you know, it's just such an intense environment. You go into classes in Con Hall, which is where people go to graduate, which seats 2,000 students in a class.
Oh my goodness.
And you realize like this, it's a whole different like beast from what you kind of are used to in high school and going into it. So you obviously saw like this calling with or this really keen interest with naturopathy. And how did you like, obviously, you know, I think we talked about it even on the last podcast because we were doing like this concept of comparison, and obviously there's a lot of pressure and comparison in school. How did you like make the shift, or what kind of obstacles came in your way with like going from university into, or like the traditional life science route into naturopathy? Like what kind of things did you see that you had to overcome?
I mean, even just the contrast of being in Toronto and at University of Toronto and then coming to Trent, it was just it was just so much more like I felt relaxed and I was happier. I feel like I focused better and there's just like less stress in my life, right? But then so I did an undergrad in biology, and there was a specialization in health sciences that I was able to take. And so through that, I was able to connect with a naturopath in town, and I was able to kind of do like an externship for him sort of thing. So, but even prior to that, when I had decided, okay, I'm going to, you know, go and study naturopathy eventually, I should probably maybe go see one myself. And so so again, there was 2 different ones in town that I was kind of seeing. And so even through that and like going through the process and kind of observing from like a patient aspect of going through, but then also kind of observing like them as a practitioner. And so it was really nice to be able to do that. And then of course, then when I was doing the externship with the naturopath, being able to kind of like really be learning like behind the scenes to really make sure that it was something I wanted to do. You know, I know for myself, like it was the fact that I could, you know, graduate kind of with a, you know, like license or like registration to be able to do something. I felt it wasn't something like a job that people could just like take away from me, right? Like I could always have the job no matter what. And I also really liked too the fact that, because I knew I wanted to have children in the future, and just being able to kind of, you know, like be my own boss, like have kids and that sort of stuff was really, kind of important to me. Like, being my own boss and the schedule. Freedom, I guess, was something that I really, really liked.
That's cool. So, I like how carefully crafted that was. Like you're like, I explored it. I was a patient.
Like, experienced it.
And then I kind of made sure it aligned with my future before. That's cool. That's really mindful.
Because it's a big decision, right? It's like you do a 4-year undergrad, which is a lot, and then you're like, I'm going to do 4 more years, right? So it's something that, and I was reaching out. Like my brother was living in Toronto at the time, and so he knew some people that were students at the college. So like I got their email, I would send them like tons of questions, and they, you know, took the time to respond back to me.
I heard they're really good for that there.
Like I just really appreciate it, and like we still keep in touch now because you know she's a naturopath in Toronto, and like it's just really nice because it's, you know, sometimes you can get inundated with tons of emails and it's like, you know, but it really can go a long way when someone's like really needing some guidance, right?
So that's you know, school starting back up in a few weeks, and a lot of students, you know, are going that traditional route because it's just like, it's that like path that we're all just like subjected to. And do you have any like tips for how people can find their sort of place either in university, in sort of the bigger picture of schooling, or even if like considering that's the route that they should, or they feel that's like true to them or not?
You know, I think I would just always say to really listen to your gut and like your instinct, because I feel it can be so easy to be like, just guided down the path, like herded like cattle sort of thing of like what you should be doing. But if you're always have this, just in the back of your mind, like this doesn't feel right, or like I don't like it, then, it can be easier to say, but like, to have the courage just to be like, what, I'm just going to maybe take a break and think about it for a year, or maybe go travel or explore. And like, it can just be hard going off the beaten path. But I think if you don't, you know that you kind of need to, or that you need to really like speak your voice and just say, no, this isn't truly what I'm meant for. It's still awesome, and it's awesome people are doing it, but I need to be doing something else, because those things can really drag you down and can really be like eat away your soul, after a while if you don't really listen to it.
Yeah.
So, and I think too, like, it's okay to quit. Like if you're doing a program or you're in a job already and it's really not calling to you, like, it's okay to just switch gears. Like we shouldn't really think so much of stopping something that maybe doesn't fill us with passion as like a failure, right? You just learn from those. And, and I think a lot of other people would probably look up to you for doing that, because I think they can be a little scared to maybe doing the same thing that you might be doing, right? Because it can be scary, like the unknown and not knowing the path, but there's a lot of growth and there's a lot of learning in that, which, can bring so many other wonderful things.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned that a little bit before, just how like not listening to that voice or following your gut is doing a huge disservice to yourself, because you're really, really squandering a bunch of goodness that could come to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you listen to your gut? Like, what do you do to get there? Or is it just this, like, you're so in tune that it's just there?
Yeah, I feel it's definitely been something, like I feel I've been fairly intuitive for a long time, but I feel it's something I've been harnessing more, doing more like meditation practice, and just trying to get myself more in the zone. And just with like, there's so many things going on with business and raising a family and like all these different things. It's like, I just feel being pulled apart in so many different directions that I find like trying to get quiet and just like like inner quiet, as well as like my external environment too. And just really like what are the constant thoughts going on in my mind? Because clearly, like if there's something that I'm not addressing, like it's going to be showing up somehow. But yeah, and I find meditation too, like really helps me just to kind of really, understand just how I'm feeling, and I find journaling too. Like I've always been a big writer. I think I was like 8 years old, and I like begged my mom to get me a journal, and I still have them all, which is actually really cool. Amazing. So it's like, it's kind of neat to look back and just the words I use, like the slang when I'm like 10, and like just the friends I was hanging out with. So it's neat to look back, but I think it's always been such an outlet for me that like, whatever's going on inside, if I can just get it out, it just helps me organize my thoughts and to move forward with things. Yeah. Cool.
That's something that we talk about a lot, because we're both big advocates of writing it down, like actual paper journals instead of something digital. I mean, my notes today are digital just because I sent them to you. So I sent them to you so that you'd have, a little bit of prep. But is that something like that's sort of something that you would advocate as well?
Totally. Because I will tell patients too, like even in certain treatment plans, or if there's certain things that they're dealing with, I'm like, when you physically like take what's going on in your head and like physically putting it on paper, it's almost like you can let your body. And especially because I know lately I've been doing this when they're having trouble sleeping, because they're like, I'm exhausted all day. I try to go to sleep and then I'm wired because I'm thinking of so many things. So I say, have a journal by your bed. Whatever you're thinking of, just literally write it down. Like, doesn't matter about grammar. Don't make it look pretty. Like, just get it out. Yeah. Because then it's almost like you're allowing yourself to like, I don't need to think about those things because I can, like, they're on the paper. I can just look at them later, right? To kind of like allow yourself to go, like give yourself permission to go to bed sort of thing. But yeah, I love paper journals. I was always using a paper calendar. Like I've just within the past year, like Google Calendar, but I still have my agenda and a notebook that like anytime I have notes or thoughts, like there just goes down there. And I just find it really helps to organize myself a lot better. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever leave I'll never go fully electronic.
Yeah.
I love stationery too much.
We study that in psych all the time, that like that physical, like you've got it in your brain, sure, and you've got it on a calendar, but using your hands to put it somewhere on paper, it will actually schematize it in your brain a bit more. So you've got, it solidifies it.
Totally.
And you've got, if you're overthinking at night or whatever, those neurons are firing and they want to go somewhere. So if you put them somewhere on paper, that's an outlet. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. That, I love it. That's exactly what what we do and talk about a lot here, because it's about simplifying things, but making it tangible as well. Which writing it on paper, it is totally different from like the digital. Like it actually is so much more organized and everything. But it's really interesting that it's even part of like the practice and recommendations that you make. So, we're pretty well versed in the holistic areas, but what is naturopathy, and sort of take a few minutes just for anybody that's listening that's not entirely familiar with that term or what you would do as a naturopathic doctor.
Sure, yeah. So naturopathic medicine, so it really lies on certain principles that like first do no harm. So you're really trying to just really recognize that the body has an inherent ability that it wants to heal, but there's just certain things that have blocked it for whatever reason. So you're not maybe like getting certain nutrients, or there's certain maybe things that you're putting in your body that are not so good for your body, that's like kind of blocking what it should be doing. And then really using kind of the natural substances and natural therapies kind of in your environment in order for those things to kind of occur. So, I mean, of course, nutrition is a big thing, and looking at like diet and just like timing of food and beverages and all that sort of thing. But then the other different modalities that we learn as well is Chinese medicine. So that's a huge one. So it's not just like using acupuncture and like moxa and like cupping and those sort of things, but it's also the whole theory. So, I know I have patients saying, because I'll ask them if they've had acupuncture before, and they said, oh yeah, like it was super painful. Like I had my like physio or chiropractor did it. And I said, well, it can be very different, because we're really, when you're working with a naturopath, an acupuncturist, or a Chinese medicine doctor, it's very much like you're looking at the organs in the system, like they're all connected. If one is like really not working and very like deficient, it can be like drawing resources from the other organ systems, which then can affect those other organ systems. So it's all everything keeping in balance. And using herbs like Chinese herbs as well. And then homeopathy is another one, which I love and I use all the time, because it's something that it's just, you can kind of get different effects because you're just working on like a kind of a different paradigm than very like physical medicine. And then a lot of people are on a lot of different medications and things like that. So it's something that can be kind of safely integrated, as well as because I do see a lot of like pregnant women and babies and stuff too, which is really awesome to use in that population. And then just using like definitely other things, just like regular, like more traditional herbs and things like that. So we have a really large toolbox.
Yeah.
And, I say to patients, I'm like, it's really awesome for me, because sometimes patients come in and they're like, they're already doing all the nutrition, like they're working with a nutritionist, like they're moving their body already. And like maybe kind of the piece that they need from me is just more doing like the testing and looking at hormones and kind of going a bit deeper, because a lot of the time patients will come in and they're like, I think I'm doing everything right. My MD says like my labs are fine, but clearly I still have these issues, and I know something's going on, right? So it's nice to be able to kind of see where I can fit in, instead of just always like, well, I'm only an acupuncturist, so I'm only going to do acupuncture sort of thing, right? Like it's nice to kind of be able to kind of help them like with different paths that they're able to go on.
Yeah. I think that's kind of fun part with natural medicine. Yeah. Right? Like when I was practicing as a homeopath, a lot of people come to you like, I've done all these things, and it's really fun to be like, I can help you with that.
Yeah,
and actually
absolutely.
see like how you can fit in. It's a bit of a game that way, but it's neat because it's really profound what can happen.
It is
when people have tried everything except for the natural route.
Yes, and especially too like with homeopathy, because I feel that can even kind of be like they've maybe tried nutrition, tried some herbs, but like you really need some proper guidance with homeopathy. And like I've just had some really awesome experiences, like personally as well, because of course I use them, but just with patients. Like I most recently had a patient who she like her mother, it was had like a pretty significant disease. I think it was ALS. And so, it was like a long time coming, and she ended up passed away. And even though, she was kind of preparing for it, she still was just having a hard time like grieving and kind of being able to even talk about it at work, even though it's like a year later since it actually happened, without like completely crying. And so I didn't do like a full constitutional remedy, but I gave her more like an acute remedy to help her, because she's just like, I really have to be able to function at work and not be in tears all the time. And so I gave her a remedy that really matched with her symptoms, and she sent me an email, which I love when patients send me updates, right? It's so great. But she's just like, I took the remedy, and she's like, I just can talk about it now without actually crying. And she's like, that is so cool. But she didn't feel different. Like it's a very profound, different way that you feel, which is amazing. That I really want a lot of people to experience, because it can just be a really cool adjunct to what they're already currently doing.
So there's clearly like lots of differences between Western medicine and the way naturopathy works. Are there any sort of like particular types of patients that tend to respond better to the treatments, or like what kind of trends have you noticed with like the patients that you work with?
That's a really good question. Like, I mean, I'll have so many different types of patients come into my office. I mean, I definitely have ones that they're like, they've already seen naturopaths before, like they're familiar with things. It's just, again, they just maybe need a tune-up because certain things have changed in their life or whatever. But then, kind of the other aspect, it's the people that are so disempowered and they have no options because their doctor's just like, well, like you're just going to have to live with this, and this. Your labs are fine. Like, I don't know what else I can do. So they kind of come to me like, you're my last hope. Like, is there anything that we can kind of do?
You are the Obi Wan.
Right. And so, so I find like they're very open to be like, doesn't matter. Like, just write it down for me. Whatever you tell me to buy, I'll buy. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. And I feel when people are just very open, as well as they are compliant with kind of, okay, like let's legitimately try this, like open mind, let's give it like 3 months. Because I find sometimes people are just like, oh, like I took this I did everything you said for a week and I'm not feeling a difference. It's like, well, you've probably been experiencing these issues for years or decades. Like, you really have to sort of, understand like what your body's trying to do, and with healing, and it takes time. So it's kind of, I think the more when people can even be like really interested in that and like reading about it and kind of learning on their own, in addition to seeing a naturopath or like a homeopath, it's going to just further their benefits, instead of just like, well, she told me to take this, but I have no idea why I'm taking it, right? Although I definitely do try to explain everything and why they're taking it, but I just think kind of having the additional like, reading books or like chatting with other friends and having like other sources in their life that reinforces, oh yeah, no, that's why I should be doing that, and more for long term, and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of different kind of patients that I see. But I think being just like, understanding the principle that, natural substances in the body, that, it can heal. And instead of like suppressing everything with a lot of pharmaceutical medications, but like giving the body the building blocks that it needs to actually correct imbalances. I don't know. It just kind of makes sense to me. But of course, like it's my jam, right? But, I think sometimes they're learning that. Like, I have patients who are like, I had strep throat. I've been on 4 rounds of antibiotics and it still wasn't getting better. Like, clearly there was a missing aspect, or I need to be doing something like preventative, right? And so I think sometimes when people get to that point where just like, it's not resonating with me, like it's not making sense, or, it can just, make them a bit more open.
Totally.
Yeah. It's kind of funny what desperation can do to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it is profound, like what resistance will do to the body versus what openness. Like openness, I think, just allows you to kind of trust the process and takes away any sort of blockages that like are getting in the way of your healing.
Yeah.
Mental, physical, doesn't matter, right? Like that openness will do a lot.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I've had some patients say, if I recommend like for say anti-inflammatory sort of things, we really need to increase, say something like fish oil or like a plant-based omega-3, and they're like, man, like I remember like my grandma used to like give that to like my dad, or like, you know what I mean? Something like that. And it's just like, like all of these things, it's not like they're really new, like they were always there. It's just they're kind of like modernized and just in the way that we're kind of taking them. It's just like a lot newer than it was maybe like 50 years ago. Right? But even with Chinese medicine, like it's been around for over 5,000 years. Like old. Clearly it's had profound effects and benefits. Yeah. And even the whole theory hasn't changed over all those amount of years, even though we know so many different things about the body and, microbes and all that sort of stuff. And I just think that's just so fascinating how they were able to like discover and like put that all into practice in ancient China.
Intuitively.
And we're still using the same principles. It's just, it's amazing.
Yeah, that really nails on something that we've talked about a lot, but even just the research going in, I mean, nutritional science is not an old science. And that's, we're continuously learning like things, even like fish oil, like you just mentioned, and like the areas of psychology that are going into like well-being and positive psychology and meditation. Like it's only been a decade or so. That's why things like floating are taking off, because we now know those things that have been around for centuries that people have been doing and promoting their well-being, but it's only been a little while, and like so the research is just catching up. And I think like a lot of what you're saying with naturopathic medicine and like all these different modalities are really definitely on the edge of like exploding, right? In popularity, in usage, in validation even of things that work, but we haven't quite actually studied that in depth. Like even just the way like the Wim Hof method, he has introduced these breathing techniques which are just adapted from yogic techniques from and really old like styles of breathing to increase oxygen content in the body and like the cold exposure that comes with it, and like he's just made it into something that's a little more mainstream and westernized, even because we were talking about this, right? It's like he's a friendly like Dutchman that's making like breathing cool again.
And breathing's not new. But it's been around for a long time.
And
it's funny. Things are just catching up, and it's encouraging, really. I think
that's it.
Western medicine and science had such an explosion, and it's advanced so quickly. And now to see this almost like union of the East meeting the West now, where like science is studying natural medicine and saying like, oh, there is something to this 5,000-year-old thing. Like there's a reason it hasn't died yet. That's cool.
Absolutely.
And studying meditation, like that's sweet that we're getting there, and studying breath work and how it can actually like clear viruses from the body. Like that's amazing.
Because it's something that everyone has access to, right? It's just, you just have to learn it, maybe study a little bit, but then it's no extra cost or like huge investment. It's just putting it in the practice and having it at your, like those tools at your fingertips that I think people want, right?
Totally.
Yeah, because we've been over the last even 10 episodes or so, like with Josh talking about breathing, we've been talking about breathing.
It's trendy right now.
And like air is free, right? And
so far.
We've started that's right, until it becomes like the Lorax. It starts getting
it's like
canned.
Knock on wood before we can. Like, is that wood? I don't know.
I don't know. It's Mike Doherty knocked on wood on that, so
we'll see. We'll find out.
Keep it going. But and so we've started incorporating that as part of like our pillar like system of those things that need to be incorporated for well-being and everything to do with that. And so, with meditation, and you saying like you talked about having a meditation practice. What kind of what does that look like for you? Is it something you do daily or almost daily? Like, how do you fit it into your schedule? Those kinds of things. What's your preferred like meditative practice?
Yeah, so I always it was always something I wanted to do a lot more of, and then like learning about it more at school, and it was just something like I never put into practice, and it really wasn't until just like starting the business and then like having kids and just feeling so like chaotic in my like internal self. I felt chaotic as well as like external, and so so I actually use an app. Like I use the Headspace app because I really like that it kind of keeps track of my time. And it's even sometimes if I'm not listening to the prompts, I just kind of like that. It also gives me the time of like if the 10 minutes is up or 15 minutes is up sort of thing. I only do between 10 and 15 minutes. And I do try to do it first thing in the morning. When my kids are in school, I find it's kind of I'm up, I'm doing all kid related stuff, I get them out the door, and then it's kind of like my time to kind of reset and put the tone in place for my day. So then I'll do maybe some journaling first, like I'll do like a gratitude journal and just like, again, kind of get certain thoughts out, and then I'll meditate, and then I kind of like start my day. But I also I really like to run outside as well, or even running on the treadmill, and I find that like it's almost kind of like a meditation as well. Like I just feel it really clears my head, and I'm just get in the zone. But that's at the same time, it's like I get all these like awesome ideas at the same time sometimes. Yeah. So I'm like, I need to be like writing it down. But so I'd say, I do try to do it daily, and I do definitely notice a difference. Like I can focus better, and it just really helps the mental state for myself.
That's cool. I like that you use movement as meditation, because that's kind of it is one of my philosophies in fitness, is that like it is a really good opportunity, whether you're throwing weights around and doing this crazy high intensity thing, you're going for a walk, whatever. If you get into your body and out of your head, it's amazing what comes to you, and it's amazing just getting into the flow state, which is what we talk about a lot here. What that will do for you. Whether it's mentally, ideas coming to you, even healing, like that's the space for your body to heal. Which is what the tanks are for too. Like it's a space for your body just to take a minute and like do its thing. And it's really cool because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm too tired to work out, I'm too tired to run, whatever. But that energizes you, and that can also help heal your body. It's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. I like that. Moving meditations are my thing.
Yes. Yes, me too.
So actually, that's a great thing to kind of connect to is, have you found your flow? My favorite question for the show is, so it's sort of how does your brain wrap around that kind of concept? Or
and I would say like I like doing like working out, because like I do like to run, and then in the winter I'm not like a winter runner outside. I'll do more like inside, so like I'll go to the gym, kettlebells. Like I really love any sort of like physicality, like doing yoga as well, but I also do find, and even just like with being an entrepreneur and having, kind of more reading and learning about finding like your zone of genius and when you work best. Like some people work really well at night, some people work better in the morning, and just really kind of finding like the time where I can just like get a whole bunch of things done, especially like the creative things that I have to like write or create, or like that takes a lot of like mental energy. I'm a better morning person, and so
vibe on that.
with having kids, it can kind of like you don't really have your mornings to yourself, and so I will actually like sometimes set my alarm, and I could be up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I've been amazed at how much, even if they do get up at 6 a.m. because sometimes my kids get up really early, but like it's amazing in that hour. It just seems so effortless for me to get what I need to get done, versus if I were to do those same tasks at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., it's just so, I'm just like, oh, I do not want to do this. Like, it's so painful. And I just think that's so weird. It's the exact same task, but it's just a completely different time of day, but also just like my brain has just slept when I've got up, right? And it's just like fresh and I'm just good to go. I've always been a morning person. Like even as a teenager, like as a part-time job, I worked at Peterborough Golf and Country Club and as part of the greens crew. So I was like up and like biking to down Arbor Road at like 5 a.m. to like go work and cut greens, right? And I loved it. Like I felt so good. Versus if I were to like go to bed super late, get up super late, even though if I were to have say the same 8 hours, like I'm just, my brain doesn't function and I just can't get in the zone. So I have to sleep, and getting up early and doing kind of my most prioritized things that day, it's so much better for me. And then it just sets such a good tone for the rest of the day.
Totally. Cool. Yeah. That's actually, we've touched on like the timing stuff a little bit. I think it's kind of a future episode to do like the actual kind of like breaking it down. There's a book called When by Daniel Pink that breaks down the different times of day that he sort of studied is the best to do certain types of tasks. But we've sort of concluded that it all comes down to like that self-awareness of what time is best for you. But I've never really linked that to flow states necessarily, where they kind of combine together in this one sort of like thing to make it like the sum is greater than the parts. That's really cool way to think about it. And I think that's it makes sense to me that if like your thing is writing, but you're also timing it to when your brain's functioning best, like that's going to be like a deeper state of flow than if you're trying to force it, like go against the grain when you're not ready, when your body's not primed properly for it. That's a really cool way to think about it.
I also just see that as like self-respect, right? Like if you know yourself and you operate best, it's like honor that.
Totally.
Because that's also just a better state for your body, a better state for your mind. And like you said, it sets your tone. As opposed to having this like dread of, oh my gosh, I have to do this thing that I love, but not when I love to do it.
And like pushing yourself, right? Instead of just like allowing it to be and going through it. It's like you don't have so much resistance.
Exactly.
Which is nice.
Yes. It's important.
You also touched on gratitude journaling there, which is really interesting because I've got a blog post that I'll probably release in the next day or so about gratitude journaling, because it was just like, it was something that came to mind that I believe I've definitely written about in the past, but it was time to write it again. And so anyway, my question with that is like, do you have any specific tips kind of like that are your go-tos for people that, in conversation it comes up that you're a naturopathic doctor, and like the things I'm sure people are like, oh, it's just like with like somebody that's like, finds out that I've studied nutrition, or, Telsey has background in homeopathy and in training. And there's always like the question like, oh, how do I lose weight, etc. Like, what are like your go-to like quick tips for anybody that's kind of like just trying to get started with whatever sort of change?
It's a good question, because again, I feel like there's so like so varied, right, of what's coming at me. But like I think the things that I'm most consistently saying is like be consistent, like with what you pick. Like if it's like doing yoga or like drinking water, like it's just, if you're consistent with it, then eventually it's just going to be just like second nature, right? It's not that like extra energy you have to put, like, oh, I have to make sure I drink my however many ounces a day, or I have to do yoga today. It's going to be like, you just do yoga and you just drink water. And now it kind of allows space for, okay, like maybe now you can kind of more look into what are the specific, foods maybe that you need to have more of and maybe less of, or like having more time to meal prep, or, things like that. And but I find with, in general with our society, fast paced, people being like, I'm so busy to do this, I'm so busy to do that. It's like, okay, well, what can you do, right? Is it easy for you to like have some water and have some really good quality supplements that you'll be consistent with? Like that's going to help you maybe then get like better sleep so that you have a bit more energy, so that you'll have energy and you'll kind of want to be going and moving your body a bit more or doing more other self-care. And so yeah, I'm always trying to just kind of gauge where people are at, because again, so many people are at so many different stages where I'm literally trying to get them to just really drink more water because they don't drink any, and just have, you know, more real food instead of processed food, versus other people are so like, they're so beyond and they're just like already there and understanding. They're like, again, like I mentioned, they know homeopathy. They're like, oh yeah, I use that all the time. I use this, right? So that's like, I approach it differently because they already kind of know, you know, the deal with certain things. But yeah, like I would say being consistent. But then I think even deeper than that is like, why? Like, why does it all matter anyway? Right? Like, why do you want to feel better? Because not everyone's, you know, answer is going to be the exact same, right? Like the motivation for getting better or for feeling better, happier, joy, whatever it is going to be so different. And so even sometimes like when patients are able to verbalize that, like kind of using that, right? Like, well, if you want to be able to like go play with your grandkids, like we really have to make sure we get like the inflammation down in your body, right? They're like, oh, okay. Instead of just like take all these things, right? It's, yeah, just kind of more the knowledge around why, but then like the purpose of why you want to do it in the first place.
Yeah, connecting it all.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. Definitely is. Yeah.
You got it.
with like essentially like with that, breaking it down into like the key to habit formation, right?
Yeah.
Making things less taking up less processing power in your mind because it's become more automatic. That's
and then it just allows for like the other things, because like there's like 1,000 things that you could be incorporating, right? But then it's, you know, like just like little steps at a time are still important when you're in it for the long term. That's the other thing. Like I try to say to patients, like, this isn't just, you know, let's do this for 3 months and then you go back to that way of living before, because all of those things might eventually come back. It's like, this is like you're legitimately changing your lifestyle, which can be permanent, and you can like prevent certain things from returning or even occurring. But it's a long-term game.
Yeah.
That's what I tell clients too, like with that consistency key. It's like, my goal for you is to make this as normal as brushing your teeth every day. Like it should be as routine. And if you don't do it, you should feel like you've missed something.
Yeah.
You've missed a step in your routine.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
How can we get there? And it's always that why, it's that consistency, just showing up.
Yeah.
Brush your teeth.
Yeah.
It's the same with whether it's nutrition or anything, right? Because there's always like a new fad diet, but consistency is what it comes down to. It's like the long term, and so whatever is the low-hanging fruit that you can take away and work on, that's going to last you a lot longer than just trying to do it as a quick 3-week or 3-month sort of thing. Make it into part of your lifestyle is essential. And then so you kind of touched on, everybody's got this perception of being too busy to incorporate these things, and you know, we have this stance of like deliberate use of social media, and because that's where a lot of time is just getting like gobbled up. And so what's your take on social media these days? How do you kind of incorporate it? Obviously, as like a local small business, you've got to make use of it in ways for that cost-effective marketing of yourself. How do you find balance with it, or do you find yourself getting stuck in the wormhole of social media, and sort of how do you pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, for sure. So it is definitely something like I didn't really use too much of. And especially like even with running my business, like I did have like a business page on Facebook and things like that. But it was just so much work, because it is a lot of like content and like, again, consistency to like show up on, you know, any sort of social media platform. But then it wasn't really until then, like my kids were a little bit older, and I really kind of was just like, just rebranding and kind of really wanting to, like just put yourself out there more, because you have to, like when you're a business, right? And so I feel that it's definitely something that I'm on there a lot for business. I think if I didn't have a business, I don't really think I would be using it as much as I do. Because it really can be so great with just like connecting and networking and things like that, like in the industry, and especially on something like Instagram, like that's where a lot of like health and wellness like lives on that, and Facebook, right? So those are definitely like the two, but they are like the two biggest platforms for social media. But yeah, I for sure can get in like the zone of just like, you're just scrolling, and sometimes I'm just like, I'll stop and I'm like kind of irritated with myself. I was like, that was just mindless. Like I didn't gain any benefit from that. If anything, I decreased like my train of thought of what I was doing. And it took away like precious time that I have, that again, like I could be doing, like going into something like a bit more productive for myself. So I really try to have better boundaries in, like I'm on there, I'll post, I'll reply to stuff, and I kind of like just chunk time it, right? And then I really will put like do not disturb. I put my ringer down just so I'm not getting all notifications. I've turned a lot of notifications off. So really when I do open my phone, like I don't see, Facebook and Instagram notifications. I just see like maybe messages from like that are more important sort of thing. So I feel having the boundaries, and then just like I'll just shut my phone off certain periods of the day too, just so it's like there's no temptation. But yeah, I think in general with patients, like I have had patients where like they've had to delete their account off Facebook, or like delete the app or whatever, because they just found they were going on it and they were just getting so like anxious, like looking at other people's stuff and feeling like, oh my God, like they're doing this, I feel I should be doing this, or, like things like that. And it was just really playing on their mental health aspect. And so I was like, wow, good for you. Like I didn't tell her to, but she just on her own, she just like, no, I'm totally disconnecting. And then other people, they just kind of find that it's just something that they, need a lot more work around, but it's just kind of the easy go-to, right? Like when you're stressed, you can just kind of like look at it. Like it is challenging, but it can be used in such a good way. I just think that it's something that it's kind of hard for people to kind of be utilizing it in more of maybe like a constructive, like positive way. Because I do feel a lot of people get really stressed out with what they're seeing, or they're like mad of what they see. It's like, well, just unfollow those people, or just maybe
it's funny, eh?
like you don't have to be looking at it, right? But then you're just kind of being forced to, and just kind of reminding people too. I mean, everything that's on there for the most part, like it's people's highlights, right? It's not showing all of the struggles and things that aren't so nice and pretty to put on there. So don't think that people aren't also feeling the exact same way, because like people come into my office and they tell me how they're feeling, yet, if someone else were to look at their whole like Instagram, they'd be like, they have the perfect life. Nobody has the perfect life, right? But it's easy to just think that when you look at social media. So that's where it's something that it has to be used. It has to be used with caution. I think it really does.
Well, it's I took a media course a couple semesters ago, and Marshall McLuhan's a big like media man back in TV day, and he made a comment on how he believes that technology is becoming what he calls like an external central nervous system. Like it's becoming something that's so ingrained in our wiring. Like our phone goes off and we have anxiety, like we have to check it, we have to check it, we have to check it. Like, and there's a wire in our brain that's like, do that. Yeah. Which is scary. Yeah. But I guess you know like lots about the central nervous system, because that's what you interact with in your practice. I wonder if there's ways that we can kind of, I don't know, medicate that, right? Like even coaching your patients on maybe social media is not good for your central nervous system. Yeah. Like how can we detach that? I don't have an answer yet, but like it's interesting, the anxiety that it can provoke, and then that anxiety can cause a lot of toxicity in your system, and then you have all these blockages. Yeah. It's wild. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think having more like boundaries and constraints with it, right? And especially with kids, because kids are getting like super addicted, which is like huge problems. Like, and I think it's just something that
again, it just takes that work. And I mean, it's, nothing comes without, like, it's so awesome. Like, internet and social media can be so awesome. But then there's also like the other side of the coin where it can be really detrimental. And I think we're seeing how it can be detrimental. And unfortunately, just something else that people kind of have to be like aware of and maybe put up boundaries with. But, simple things, just reducing, turning off certain notifications, like turning your ringer off, like don't take it to bed, like literally have it to like turn it off, keep it somewhere else. Because again, there's the other like wireless and electromagnetic frequencies and all that stuff that we could get into as well. But it's just in terms of the distraction, it can be so hard on people's like focus, which is already, I think, such a problem. It's not making it better. So just put the phone away, turn it off.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else that you want to touch on today? I think we're sort of coming towards.
I think that was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, how do we find you? Where do we go?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess, talking about social media, like I am on Instagram, that's kind of where I hang out most. Yeah. So I'm at Laura Anderson ND. And then, from there, you can kind of find like my website. It's lauraandersonnd.com. Basically, everything is Laura Anderson ND. So it's pretty across the board on Facebook as well. So that's where you can connect with me. And email is the best way to get a hold of me too, in case people want like more questions or inquiries and things like that. Cool. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks,
awesome.
Laura.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, that was great.